skipping the break, keep talking? Okay. Oh, did you hear that? Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. I liked the lights up a little bit if it's possible, but if not, that's fine. It's fine. We can all be in the dark. Oh, that's nice. Thanks. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm Tara Adams. If your sister's name is Tara, it's fine. Honestly, it happens all the time. So I'm used to doing about a 90-minute chat on this topic, so I've cut it down to the highlights. Today is really just a brief conversation about my very favorite thing to talk about, which is suicide prevention. Doesn't that sound strange? Look at my face. I love talking about suicide. So today is just a brief conversation for all of us. And we are planning to have a little bit of time for questions and answers after. So my plan here is start the conversation, share a little bit of information, and then welcome you to ask a few questions. How does that sound? Good. Sounds good? Okay, good. And I'm like Cynthia. I had to bring a lot of notes because I'm used to having a monitor and slides. This is the first time I've spoken standing up since March 3rd. And I am not a clinical mental health specialist. We have some here in the room, and thank you for your work. Thank you. So I'm trying to make the bridge to you, by the way. So thank you for all your work. So the first thing we'll do before I share anything is we're going to acknowledge there's a lot of stories and lived experience in this room, maybe even more so in this room than most rooms that I talk to. So can we all just take a minute to honor our lived experience? I know that I've lost 3 people to suicide, and every time I get up here, I just take a second to honor them. So we have lived experience in our room, we have people who've lost people to suicide in our room, and we will probably have people with thoughts of suicide in our room. So let's make sure this is a very safe and loving space. Yes? Yeah. Can we get 2 claps for safe space? Okay, that was for you. If you're feeling uncomfortable at all, please take a break. Please make sure we know how to support you. Or please feel free to come and chat with me after, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do is ask you a question. If you're comfortable to answer it, that's great. If not, don't worry. Without sharing any stories or any details, my question is this. Have you ever been in a conversation that included suicide? That's all, hands up. Okay, so I've asked this question 106 times, and the average answer is usually about a third of the room I'm in, no matter where I am. The highest answer I've had is 100% in a group of 25. So I'm not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. I'm trying to say we have to start talking about this because my guess, most of you don't have suicide training. Okay, so you were in that conversation without any training. And again, today isn't really a training per se. We don't quite have enough time. It's more of a conversation. So just try to sit with this for a minute, and we're going to try to just learn a little bit and start our conversation. Okay? And maybe after today, maybe that's your takeaway, is you do want to do some suicide training. Because there's lots of good stuff out there. So we'll start with a little bit of math. So thoughts of suicide are very, very common. Not a lot of people know this. Pre-pandemic, we talked about 1 in 20 Canadians has thoughts of suicide. Post-pandemic, we're not putting it in writing. But the numbers are looking more like a 1 in 7, 1 in 10 Canadians have thoughts of suicide. So where I feel like my passion is that we're going to normalize this idea that people in our lives have thoughts of suicide. And we will never, ever, 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 one more ever, normalize or glamorize people who may die by suicide. It's a completely different thing. So if we did the math, and it's not my strong suit, probably 4 million Canadians a year are having thoughts of suicide. Sorry, 2 million, whereas 4,000 Canadians die by suicide each year. Okay, so for today, because we don't have a lot of time, let's just focus on this idea of how would we support a person with thoughts of suicide, okay? And if you want to go further and get more training later, or talk to someone who's a clinical mental health specialist, you can do that as well. But let's just really put our minds towards what would we do if we were in a conversation with a person having thoughts of suicide? For every 3 men who die by suicide, there's 1 woman. However, we're very concerned about all genders equally. So women do have more thoughts of suicide, however, more men die by suicide, and all the genders in between. I'm concerned about all the genders. However, we do have some campaigns that target men, and thank you to Men's League for your awesome work. Sometimes men don't feel as comfortable connecting to our resources, so shout out to the Buddy Up campaign through the Center for Suicide Prevention, shout out to Movember, and all those campaigns that are trying to make that space for more men to come forward, because those stats are not okay. There's also some differences in those that die by suicide by age group. So the most frequent highest age range is 50 to 64, then 35 to 49, which I just left, 20 to 34, 19 and under, and 65 and under. So sometimes these stats are a little difficult to talk about in here, but we need to know. We need to know what's going on out there. So the next thing we'll do is we'll do a little bit about my favorite topic, which is language. The language around suicide. So I would talk for hours on the language around mental health and mental illness, but let's just talk about suicide for a second. So the language I want you to leave here today with is called people first language. Who's heard of people first language? One, two, okay, great. So everybody is a whole person, everybody, all of you. You're a whole person who may also live with a physical illness, a mental illness, a disability, or anything else. So if you remember anything today, we are all a whole person, and you may live with a mental illness. You may live with a physical illness. You may live with thoughts of suicide. So in our world, the language we're going to talk about is, let's really move away from the words committed suicide. It's really hard. It's not a crime. It's not selfish. We need to speak more positively, inclusively about those we have lost. And also we need to speak more positively about the people we lost for those of us left behind, right? So people die by suicide, they don't commit suicide. The other one we're going to do is also very difficult, just baked into our society. People would talk about Tara. Tara is suicidal. She is, that's who she is. She is suicidal, or Tara is depressed. Would you ever say to me, I am cancer? Tara is cancer, did you know? No. So we're going to say people live with depression. We're going to say people have thoughts of suicide. We'll try to remove that idea that you are your diagnosis. What do you think? Can we do this? Yes. I'm not going to overuse the two claps. I'll just use it once or twice. Okay. So we have people die by suicide, and people live with thoughts of suicide, or have thoughts of suicide. So that's your homework for today. Try to change those things. You think it won't make a difference, it does. Things we're also not going to say would ever be completed suicide or successful suicide, things like that. So here's what I want you to imagine. I've just started doing a new mime. Let me know if you like it. When you're careful and inclusive and positive with your language, you are basically putting up this flag that waves behind you. And this invisible flag says, I'm safe. You can talk to me. It's okay. I'm the person you can talk to. So just think about the language you use, whether it's gender, inclusion, suicide, mental health. When you're careful and thoughtful, think about you're just raising that flag. And the flag says, you can come here. I can talk to you about this. It's a new mind we're working on. In the world of suicide prevention, what we really need is lots of different roles. Lots and lots of different ones. If the general population could get to the place where we are going to be today, where we just talked about it a little bit, that's my dream. Then we have a role called suicide aware, and there's a little bit of training that I do. Particularly, I do this work in the workplace. Then we have another level, suicide alert. Then we have suicide intervention, and then we have our clinical mental health folks. So think about if the whole world could talk a little bit, and most people were aware, and lots of people were alert, and then some people could do intervention, and then we have all the mental health people. Oh, right? Like we're just creating these layers. So you don't have to have a deep, deep dive into this topic, but it would be excellent if we could all be a little more aware. Does that make sense? Okay, good. I like having the lights on. So everything I'm talking about today is like walking towards aware, almost aware kind of level. If you have additional training, thank you for doing that. Or if you're looking at additional training, you can do stuff afterwards. So I think we're going to skip a little bit of stuff. That's okay. So when I'm doing introducing suicide prevention in the workplace, and let's be sure, not every workplace is ready for this topic. Not every workplace, but when they are, we try to keep things pretty simple. Talk about stress response. I mean, I think Joanne and other people, Cynthia, you were all talking about stress response. Stress response is going to be high should you find yourself in this conversation. So we need to keep things very simple. So the way that I've broken it down in the workplace, there's 4 steps, but we can cut one of them off in the community. So the first step would be to be a little bit prepared. And you're all doing that today, so great job. The second would be to learn how to respond. We're not going to dig deep into that today, we just touch on it a tiny bit. And the third is to take care of yourself, the person who received the news. So I'll talk a little bit about how to do that. If you were in the workplace, we would also add one more step, which would be something along the lines of informing your employer for health and safety reasons, not to get that person fired, making sure they're safe, making sure you're safe, and tracking, because employers need to track how often is this conversation even happening. Do we need suicide prevention training at our work? I don't know. Has anyone ever had that conversation? Oh, we don't have any reports. Must not be happening. Yeah, it is. So that's why we need to do that part. So here's what we're going to do. It's not often that people ask you to take out your phone. Would you please take out your phone? It's my favorite part. And if you're comfortable, what I'd really like us all to do is to add one new contact to our phones. Okay, and I'll give you the number. The number is going to be for the Canada Suicide Prevention Helpline. Every single class that I do, I make them do this. There's no class that doesn't do this. So, first of all, acknowledge that the idea of putting a suicide hotline in your phone is uncomfortable. So acknowledge that. Doesn't feel great. But trust me, if you ever need this number, you will be like, oh, Tara, that was a great idea. Because you don't have to go look for it. And your stress response will be high. And it'll be hard to figure out what to do. And when you can just press dial, it's going to be great. Okay, so whatever you've called your new contact, pretty long to type in Canada Suicide Prevention Helpline. So has everybody got one new one open?
Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Adams is the response. Okay, the number is 1-833-456-4566. 1-833-456-4566. Now, a couple of cool things. Do you notice in your phone contacts that if you were in a conversation with me and you've never had suicide prevention training, and I started sharing, this is what I'm thinking about, do you notice that you could click share contact and send that number to me? Does everybody see that? Okay. I want you to be able to call that number if I need help. I want you to be able to give me that number and role model that you have that number. And if you're the receiver of any of that type of conversation and news, you also can call that number and say, did I do it okay? I haven't actually had suicide prevention training. Did I say the right thing? I feel really overwhelmed. So you can call that number. The person with thoughts of suicide could call that number. You could share that number. Now, heads up, don't just share that with everyone in your family without explaining why. I've had a few people do that. So, but if you do have the kids that are the age that have a phone, mine is like a year away, not quite there, maybe have a little conversation at dinner around, what do you think about having this phone number in your phone, just in case you ever need it. So how does that feel? Does it feel scary, or does it feel like, yeah, I won't look at it, but I like knowing it's there? Okay, that's the goal. That is the goal. Now, if you work in a company where you have an EFAP, who likes acronyms? Who knows what an Employee Family Assistance Program is? Okay, something called Homewood, or Green Shield, or Murno changed their name during the pandemic, LifeWorks, or Inkblot, things like that. I also really recommend you put that phone number in your phone. Okay, so that'd be a little extra homework for you. The other numbers that are really important to have, and this is the prepare stuff, so just think ahead. Any one of us can call 911, right, Cynthia? Okay, just checking. Yeah, if you're unsafe, if you feel someone else is unsafe, you can call 911. Also, a couple weeks ago, I called up 811 and 211 just to say, hi, who is on the other end of the phone? And it is people who have at least mental health first aid and suicide prevention. likely a nurse, or more and more and more. So there are folks there ready to help you. So if you start to freeze and you can't remember what to do, you can't remember what to say, that's all right. You have 911, 811, 211. I don't think you have to put those phone numbers in your phone, pretty sure. Plus, you also have now the Canada Suicide Prevention number. So feel prepared. Feel like I don't want to be in those conversations, but I'm a safe place and I might end up being in that conversation, and when I am, I have a lifeline to call. Okay? That's what I want for you. So when you're responding, you're going to respond quickly. And again, I don't have time to do some suicide prevention training with you, but you really want to respond quickly in the moment. First of all, it's really hard for you if you keep that information and it starts to weigh on you. And second, for the person who may or may not be safe. So if you have the chance to uncover that a person is having thoughts of suicide, you have to step into that conversation. I will never tell you that's easy, but I will tell you it's worth it. Okay? So I have a gift for you though. If you are in this kind of conversation, you're going to need to ask somebody very, very directly if there's been some warning signs, if you heard someone say something, you saw someone do something, or more likely your stomach did a backflip and you feel really nauseous. And you're like, oh no. I'm going to need you to ask them right away, and I need you to ask them directly. Okay, you got to cut right through. And that's tricky, because what we don't want to say is like, hey, Tara, you're not going to do anything stupid, right? You've been doing anything stupid, right? Right? Please say no, please say no, please say no. And what am I thinking? Cognitively, where am I at? What's happening in my brain? Whatever's happening, you won't understand it. And what I'm thinking is, I'm going to do the only thing that makes sense, not stupid at all. So that won't work, okay? And then you wouldn't say, oh, Tara, you wouldn't hurt yourself, would you? Please say no, please say no, please say no. And I'm thinking, nope, not going to hurt at all. Makes perfect sense, not going to hurt. I've thought about this for a long time. Okay? So you've got to cut right through, and this is really hard on you. I know that. Okay? So you've got to cut right through, and you've got to say, hey, Tara, are you thinking of killing yourself? Tara, are you thinking of suicide? But I have a gift for you. I have a present. The gift is the word sometimes, okay? Because it's going to be hard to get air in your mouth. So this is my gift for you. So I want you to go like this. Tara, sometimes when people say what I just heard you say, or Tara, sometimes when people do what I just saw you do, they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? Okay? Then I just put it on the table. I'm not accusing you. I have no opinion. I have no judgment. Sometimes when I hear what I heard, saw what I saw, this is what's happening. Okay? So that's your gift. Remember that, the word sometimes, because it's going to be hard to get it out of your mouth. And then you've got some phone numbers, right? Okay, good. All right, so let's say you were in one of these conversations, and I'm sorry, again, we're not going to get into all the different scenarios right now. I'm just going to gently gloss over some of the things that might happen. Whatever the resolution, whoever you may get in touch with, because that is your job. If you don't have training, your job is to find somebody with more training than you. That's your only job. That's your role. Okay? So you could find me. I have Safe Talk and Assist. You could find a therapist. You could call 911. You need to find someone. That is your only job. Once you've done that, you have to think about self-care. I think it's interesting, Cynthia, and thank you again for your talk. You said, I didn't realize that waiting to take care of myself was injuring myself. So we don't need any cumulative damage. We need you to take care of yourself right away. So within 48 hours of any conversation that includes the word suicide, please have a conversation. So it could be something informal. So an informal debrief is you call your friends and family, your coworker, and you say, oh my gosh, I just had the hardest conversation. If you're going to do that, tread lightly. Okay, you don't want to inadvertently hurt the person you're having your debrief with, so you want to start slowly. You want to ask for some consent. Like I go, hey Jade, do you have a minute? Jade's like, sure, Tara, what's up? I had a real doozy of a conversation. Is now a good time? He says yes, no, or later. You see what I mean? Or you can have a debrief with a mental health professional, which would be great. And then you can just let it fly. They're ready. You're ready for what you're gonna say, okay? So that could be the 811-211 EFAP Canada Suicide Prevention Service. I do this a lot. Can you see how I can just run off those numbers? Okay, so you will debrief to take care of yourself. Informally, you're gonna tread lightly if it's just friends, family. Formally, if you are talking to a mental health professional, then you can just say whatever's on your mind. But please do one or both, I'm a fan of both, within 48 hours after that conversation, okay? Okay. Yeah, that's debrief formal, debrief informal. Look at all these. Now, if you were in the workplace, I would work with the client and we would figure out what the formal steps are in that particular workplace. Who would you call? Is there any reporting? Is there any tracking? Is there an EFAP? All that stuff. So that would be your final step. So you're prepared. We're doing some of that today. You respond, and I gave you the gift of sometimes. You debrief to take care of yourself. Okay? And then in the workplace, you do a little bit of inform. I'm used to having slides, so I have big note pages. If you are interested, if today has piqued your interest at all, feel free to connect with me anytime. But the being aware role, I think the best fit for that is an online course called START, which I love. And if you wanted to go deeper there to be alert, suicide alert, there's a great course called Safe Talk. It's about a half day. And if you want to get to the level where you could do safety plans and interventions, there's a 2-day course called Assist. So there's all kinds of levels. Now, if you want to be a psychologist, I think it's 8 years. 8 years? Okay. Hence I'm staying here where I am. Yeah, I'm in the aware place. So we're walking there. So a couple of key messages. We have lots of different roles to create a suicide safer community. Lots and lots. You can stay here, or you can start getting more training and go deeper, whatever feels good to you. In the sort of early roles where we're living right now, think about this idea of being prepared, respond, debrief to take care of yourself. When we're prepared, we really, it increases our own mental health and our own resilience, which is counterintuitive when you think about suicide, right? But when you feel prepared, you feel better able to cope. It's good for your mental health. So think about being prepared. Think about language. Think about raising that flag, whatever that means to you, whatever words that you can use that make people feel safe and they can come to you, especially that people first language. People live with mental illness, people live with physical illness, people live with thoughts of suicide. Okay, so changing our language is important. Resources, you got a new one in your phone today. Self-care and debriefs. Suicide prevention is uncomfortable, but I like to try to keep it simple and never tell you it's going to be easy, never. But try to keep it simple. Open and honest talking about suicide prevents suicide and starts to reduce stigma. We all have a role to play. You don't need a lot of training to make a difference. And here's my most important message I want to leave you with today. And this came as the gift of feedback from some recent people in some of my classes. Whether you've had 15 minutes of learning or 2 days of intensive training, whatever you choose to do on this topic, don't do a retroactive history inventory of your whole life. Don't do that right now. Don't look back and go, oh, I missed it. I should have seen it, I should have known, I should have said something, I didn't know I was supposed to ask. I didn't know I was supposed to call. That's not going to help us. So I need you to honor anyone you may have lost, and I have lost 3 people to suicide. Honor them by using whatever you may have learned today, whatever you may learn in the future, to go forward. Because it's very difficult. I literally had a class full of people say, Tara, you've made me feel so much worse. I'm like, great. Okay, so what we need is to take what we're learning and go forward. Don't just do an inventory of all those times when maybe you should have, coulda, woulda. Okay? Promise me? Yes. All right. We all have our own stories. We've all had our own connections to this topic. Sometimes there are no warning signs. Sometimes there are no plans. Okay? And that's what I mean. Don't look back and beat yourself up. Okay? And please remember to take care of yourself. So today I'm going to hold these 3 people I've lost very, very close to my heart. And when I say close to my heart, I mean close to my melty beads heart built by my daughter. So there you go. So that's my introduction to your topic today. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit. Are we going to see if there's any questions? Do you have time?
One question.
One question, all right. Who is it? On behalf of the whole room, what's your question? It's okay.
My question would be, or did someone else have a question?
Let's do too fast.
No, okay, go ahead. I was just the filler.
Fabian.
I was just going to say, what's the most common sign that you see? Like, what's the most common one?
The most common sign would be a huge change in someone, and that's a very vague answer. So you know me, and now I'm different. Things are changing, things are off. So I always say, you don't have to be the PPP, physician, psychologist, psychiatrist. You know me. You know me. You've known me since 10 o'clock this morning, you already know me, right? So when things change, like I'm an extrovert, hi. So when I'm quiet, when I withdraw, when I don't put my video on anymore, when we have the Zoom meetings, when I decline everything, when I don't reply to my text, whatever it is, what was my usual behaviors? Everything is changing, ding, ding, ding. What's going on? Sometimes, Tara, when people don't reply to text anymore, sometimes, Tara, when I saw these 6 things, I just wanted to ask you, is this something that you're thinking about? Sorry. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, thank you.